Hello. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Sarah Hollenbeck, and I'm the co-owner of Women and Children First. We're one of the last feminist bookstores in the United States. We're beyond excited for tonight's conversation with Jami Attenberg and Susan Choi in celebration of the paperback release of Jami's latest novel, All This Could Be Yours. And we begin our virtual events as we begin our events held in the store with a land acknowledgement. So please join me in acknowledging that the land on which our bookstore stands is the occupied unceded territory of the Peoria, the Potawatomi, the Miami, and the Sioux people. We encourage all of you to learn more about land acknowledgements and the rightful owners of the land where you are viewing tonight's event at native-land.ca. Thank you so much. Women and Children First is now partially open here in Chicago, but we will continue to host all of our events virtually until 2021. Now, a few housekeeping notes. Before we get started, be sure to drop your questions. Throughout the event, be sure to drop all your questions in the Ask a Question box. It's located at the bottom of your screen. Also, there's a really handy Buy the Book box, also located at the bottom of your screen. And that will lead you to the Women and Children First website, where you can purchase All This Could Be Yours in paperback. During the event, I will also be dropping some other handy links so that you can buy Susan's books, also from Women and Children First. And please use the chat bar whenever you feel the need to applaud or interact with one another and the authors. We're so glad you're all here. On to the event. Susan Choi is the author of the novels My Education, American Woman, A Person of Interest, The Foreign Student, and Trust Exercise, which won the 2019 National Book Award for Fiction. Her first book for children is called Camp Tiger, and it was also published in 2019. A recipient of fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts and Guggenheim Foundation, Susan teaches fiction at Yale and lives in Brooklyn. Jami Attenberg is the New York Times bestselling author of 7 books of fiction, including The Middle Signs and All Grown Up. She has contributed essays to the New York Times Magazine, the Wall Street Journal, the Sunday Times, and long reads among many other publications. She currently lives in New Orleans, where she is joining us tonight. So I am trying to be cool, but this is such a huge honor to be joined by these two authors, albeit virtually. We're here tonight to celebrate the paperback release of All This Could Be Yours, and that was one of my favorite novels of last year. I love how Jami writes women. She captures a toughness that is honest and a vulnerability that is earned. I also love how Jami writes minor characters. That is, she doesn't write minor characters. There is nothing minor about any of her characters, regardless of how short of a time they're on the page. She attends to each of her characters with such care, equal weight, equal care, and equal compassion. And All This Could Be Yours, we begin with a very bad man named Victor, who's just had a heart attack. And Victor is one of the least empathetic characters that I've met in recent literature. But Jami then builds this hugely empathetic story in this world through the people who surround Victor on his deathbed. It is a remarkable book, a remarkable feat, and an absolute pleasure to read. So please join me in welcoming Jami Attenberg and Susan Choi.
Thank you so much. That was so
Sarah.
lovely. Hi.
Hi.
How are
Thank
you?
you, Sarah. I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. That was a lovely introduction, and I'm so happy that we're doing this together, and also to doing it through this wonderful woman-owned feminist bookstore that is such a wonderful part of their community. So happy to be here. How's your 2020 going? Anything new?
Hey, aren't I supposed to ask the question?
Oh, okay.
You know, my 2020, there's so much to be said about it. One of the things that I was thinking, and you're going to read, right? So
Yes,
you can't get out of that. But one of the things that I was thinking about my 2020 is, you know, in 2019, you and I both had our hardcovers come out, and we met on the road, you know, in among other places, Austin, for the Texas Book Festival, and we were promoting our books. And now it's 2020, and we have paperbacks out, and this is what that looks like. And you know, how are you finding it? Like, how are you dealing with this change? How are you? Yeah,
honestly, way less hangovers. I'll tell you that.
Wait, why? Why less hangovers?
Because I'm not going to, like, you know, book festival parties and things like that. So,
so I guess that's a plus.
I don't know. I miss people, but I get to see people here in New Orleans, so it's that part's been okay. Like, we do have space here and front yards and backyards and things like that, and people in the city have been pretty responsible about masking and social distancing, so that's been good. I'm going to be really honest with you. I felt very fortunate that I had that book come out last year. Originally, it was actually scheduled for this year, and I pushed for it to come out of fall of last year, and I feel like a freaking genius for it. But I have been watching and I'm sure you have too, so many of our peers who have gone through this, who have not been able to have the same situation and had their books come out this spring. And I've seen them all have this feeling that I didn't quite identify with, which is like they were very wistful and sad, and it was just not quite the way that they had wanted it to be. And I, you know, have had so many conversations with those authors, just being like, you still did a good job, you still wrote a good book, people are still going to read it. I know that it feels different. And then I have to say, when, like, this week, when the paperback was coming out, I had that same wistful feeling. I get it. Like, I really, really get it, even though it's not quite the same scale, because it's a paperback, and that's always a smaller kind of thing than the original launch. Like, you're just think, is anyone out there? Like, that's kind of how it feels a little bit.
Right. Yeah. It feels a little bit like a kind of a non-event. But you and I were lucky because we have, like, experience on both sides of it, right? We were both able to have the event and then able to experience this strange other reality, which for a lot of our peers is the only reality.
It is the only, So my sympathy really goes out to the people. I mean, I had some friends who had books just come out smack dab in March, and smack dab. And I mean, almost April, I think it must have been even harder because everyone was sort of like getting really, like, that was when it was just sort of really getting worked up. But so I don't know. We also were talking before we came on about how it is kind of cool that you have access to readings that you wouldn't have had access to. Like, I'm in New Orleans, you're where you are right now, and we're doing an event that's ostensibly in Chicago.
Right.
And I know that there are people on here who are from probably all over the place. So, and I've been able to see my friends' readings in New York that I wouldn't have necessarily been able to access. So I don't know. I think people are trying to roll with it, which I think is good.
Yeah. We're all rolling with it, and what's interesting is, like, there's no choosing, right? Like, there's no this is better or worse. It's just different, you know. And this, like, pandemic way that we're doing stuff has its advantages.
Especially if you don't really like people. I do like people, but I also have writer friends who are like, this is great because I don't like people, so I'm just going to stay home.
Well, I think also as writers, we're really lucky because our work is work that we can do in isolation. Even though we need people, we need our readers. Like, we're not actors, dancers. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Yes.
We were able to sort of translate what we do into this new world.
And you have adaptation of your book that is coming out like this week or something like that?
Yeah, well,
A film adaptation?
it's funny because it's coming out. It's premiering on. It's having a streaming premiere tomorrow. Actually, this whole week. It's been it's American Woman, my second novel, and it's screening all of this week, and that's kind of great and also strange. Like, on the one hand, it's great because people all over the country and world can watch it together, and it's strange because movies to me feel like a thing that you do in a darkened room with a whole lot of strangers, all of you staring in the same direction, and so that's not happening. But you know,
can anyone watch that movie streaming?
Yeah, it is ticketed for this week, and but anyone can buy a very affordable ticket and support the arts. And
I think we should do that. Let's all do that.
We should all do it. I'm doing it tomorrow. In fact, I'm doing a conversation with the director tomorrow. But today we're talking about your book.
Okay, all right.
Jamie, it's just like I could like talk to you all evening about whatever, but I do want to hear you read. So please read, and then we'll talk more.
Someday we're gonna have dinner.
Yeah,
and it's
drinks.
Delicious, and drinks.
And we will have a hangover afterwards.
Yes, I know. There's nothing like a writing hangover, like a hanging out with your writer friend hangover. Like, that's a really specific.
The best kind.
Fine. It's so much gossip. I love it. Okay. I'm just going to read from the very beginning of the book, a couple of pages. I hope you all can hear me. I'm in the front of my house, and sometimes people walk by on the street. There's a little bit of traffic, but I'm just going to, hopefully we can just roll with it. I need better lighting, and I haven't like fully committed that I need the fancy light that everyone has in their back, and I don't have it yet. So
you look great.
He was an angry man, and he was an ugly man, and he was tall, and he was pacing. Not much space for it in the new home, just a few rooms lined up in a row underneath the series of slow-moving ceiling fans, an array of antique clocks ticking on one wall. He made it from one end of the apartment to the other in no time at all, his speed of failure as much as it was a success. Then it was back to the beginning, flipping on his heel, grinding himself against the floor, the earth, this world. The pacing came after the cigar and the scotch. Both had been unsatisfactory. The bottle of scotch had been sitting too close to the window for months, and the afternoon sun had destroyed it. A fact he'd only now just realized, the flavor of the scotch so bitter he had to spit it out. And he had coughed his way through a cigar, the smoke tonight tickling his throat vindictively. All the things he loved to do, smoking, drinking, walking off his frustrations, those pleasures were gone. He'd been at the casino earlier hanging with the young bucks, trying to keep up with them. But even then, he'd blown through that pleasure fast, $1,000 gone, a visit to the bathroom stall. What was the point of it? He had so little left to give him joy, or the approximation of it. Release, that was always how he had thought of it, a release from the grip of life. His wife Barbara sat on the couch, her posture tepid, shoulders loose, head slouched, no acknowledgement of his existence. But she glanced at him now as he paused in front of her, and then she dropped her head back down again. Her hair dyed black, chin limping slightly into her neck, but still at 68 years old, as petite and wide-eyed as ever. Once she had been the grand prize. He had won her, he thought, like a stuffed animal at a sideshow alley. She flipped through an architectural digest. Those days are gone, sweetheart, he thought. Those objects are unavailable to you. Their lives had become a disgrace. Now would have been an excellent time to admit he had been wrong all those years, to confess his missteps in full, to apologize for his actions. To whom? To her, to his children, to the rest of them. This would have been the precise moment to acknowledge the crimes of his life that had put them in that exact location. His flaws hovered and rotated, kaleidoscope-like in front of his gaze, multicolored, living, breathing shards of guilt in motion. If only he could put together the bits and pieces into a larger vision, to create an understanding of his choices, how he had landed on the wrong side, perhaps always had, and always would. Instead, he was angry about the taste of a bottle of scotch, and suggested to his wife that if she kept a better home, none of this would have happened. And also, would she please stop fucking around with the thermostat and leave the temperature just as he liked? And she had flipped another page, bored with his scotch, bored with his complaints. The guy downstairs said something again, she said, about this. She motioned to his legs, the pacing, they could hear it through the floor. I can walk in my own home, he said. Sure, she said, maybe don't do it so late at night, though. He marched into their bedroom, stomping loudly, and plummeted headfirst onto their bed. Nobody loves me, he thought. Not that I care. He had believed briefly he could find love again, even now as an old man, but he had been wrong. Loveless, fine, he thought. He closed his eyes and allowed himself one last series of thoughts. A beach, sand bleached in impenetrable white, a motionless blue sky, the sound of birds nearby, a thigh, his finger running along it. No one's thigh in particular, just whatever was available from a pool of bodies in his memory. His imaginary hand squeezed the imaginary thigh. It was meant to cause pain. He waited for his moment of arousal, but instead he began to gasp for air. His heart seized. Release me, he thought. But he couldn't move, face down in the pillow, a muffled noise, a freshly laundered scent, a field of lavender, the liquid cool color of the flower interrupted by bright spasms of green. Release me. Those days are over. That's it.
Oh my God. Okay. There's so many things that I have to say about this opening. First of all, this is like a virtuosic, absolutely momentous opening, by which I mean like it has incredible momentum. It just thunders along. Like, I love the way you read it. I feel like you couldn't possibly read it any more slowly because it grabs you and carries you. But you do crazy stuff here. And, you know, like, you break all these rules in this book, which I love. I love when people do that. So the first thing you do is you introduce this incredible character who, I mean, spoiler alert, is it a spoiler alert if it's page 5? This is it for Victor.
Yes.
This is it for Victor. Victor is utterly gripping, and
he's out. Yeah.
Out on page 5. So that's the first. I mean, I'm going to stop there because I have other questions about like the way you like writerly questions about your incredibly like bold use of perspective shifts. But talk about Victor. Like, talk about Victor, because he is the Victor Frankenstein like monster of this book, and this is all we get of him. But also we get so much more through all the people whose lives he formed and deformed. Will you talk about him?
He was, when I got the idea for the book, he was like already in the coma in my head. Like, it was, I think it's like the 6th chapter was originally the first chapter, because I already didn't like him, and I already like had to put him like at a remove, like, and circle him before I could even get into his mindset. Like, I had to kind of convince myself that I needed to spend at least a little time with him, because I don't like, he is a specific character and I do know him, but at the same time, like, I feel like we give these bad guys so much attention in literature and culture, and that's part of like why we are where we are, I think. And so I wanted to like write this book, like, not in a way, not about him at all, but about kind of the impact that a person like that has. So I put him in the coma for safekeeping, I suppose. And then I kind of went back to him and explored him a little bit, but I didn't really want him to be, really didn't want the book to be about him, and except that it was about, and perhaps wishful thinking that it was about the end of him.
Well, I love what you just said about how we spend too much time in literature and in our culture and in our politics paying attention to men like this, because what you do, or what I think you do so well, is you make that clear in the book by paying so much attention to the problem of how much attention the women in his life have paid to him. I mean, everyone. I mean, he also has a son, but can you talk a little bit about these women? Because this explosive opening, this kind of like tour de force excursion into Victor's mind, is really like a door that swings open on these women, who then actually become the center of the story. So tell us about, those women, or some of your favorites among them. There's so many to choose from. I mean,
I would say that the character who was like the entry point character for me was Alex, and she really showed me everyone. I just knew her right away, and she showed me her mother, and she showed me her father, and she showed me Twyla. So I sort of go back and forth, like, which character was the most fun to write. In a way, Twyla was really fun. She is Alex's sister-in-law. She's married to Alex's brother, Gary. And I feel like anyone on here may have already read the book. So I don't know. I don't want to spoil my own book, but Twyla does some bad things. Let's say that.
Yes, she makes bad choices.
She's a bad choice girl. And And so she was like really fun to explore, even though I didn't really like her, and I kind of had to write my way into liking her. And I just let her. There's a really long chapter where she has a nervous breakdown in a CVS, and she's sort of stealing all these lipsticks, and not stealing, but sort of putting it all into the cart. Which I feel like who among us has not bought too many face masks at a CVS for no reason. So like that was like, as soon as I sent her into the CVS, it was like she really took life for me. And there's also like a little thing early on where you see her where it's like she's got too much suntan lotion on, and it sort of come off, her skin, like it's so thick. And like that was also a really crucial point for me where I understood that there was more going on under the surface, and also she's kind of greasy. So like she was really great, and she was somebody who was like impacted by Victor. He was like a really harsh, strong influence on her, and it was just like she fell so easily. And I feel like that was a character that I was interested in like getting into, like somebody who could still continue to be impacted by this person even when he's not really so powerful anymore, because we give them that power.
Right.
I'd like to think that I don't personally give them that power, but it's all there. It's all filtered into our society anyway. And then his wife, Barbara, who I find somebody who's complicit in his bad dealings as well. Like I found her not fun to write, but like almost not easy, but like I had an understanding of her even, and again, I didn't really like her, and I had to sort of write my way into giving her a little compassion. I mean, all of this is like, I don't think of Victor as like Donald Trump, and I don't think of any of these women in this book as anyone like that you would, like I could not one-to-one them with anyone, but it was really, the part of the book was a response to the fact that all these white women were voting for Trump in the last election. And I was like, I gotta try to figure out who they are, like who these women are.
Right.
And some of them anyway, certainly not all. I didn't even really cover racism in this book, to be honest. So that's like a whole other thread, but I was trying to like sort of do the most generous version of it in a way, and really understand them. And they still disappointed me, but I felt like I got to a place with them. Yeah.
I mean, I know the book isn't about Trump, and yet this is it's a timeless book because it's about family, and it's about the incredibly sort of toxic bonds that bind people together and also prevent them from ever really being able to be what they need to be for each other. But it's also very timely, right? And there you drop a couple winks, like maybe one or two at some point. I think it's Alex who says, "Our president is a moron and the world is falling apart," which is a sentence that I'm sure it applies to other periods of history, but it feels very timely to now. And so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about just the gestation of this book. When did you start it? You said that you wanted to kind of try to figure out something about these many white female voters. And so talk a little bit about where the book came from, like where it arose from in our history, our shared history.
So I started writing it, I would guess, in the fall of 2017. So I had a book that came out in the winter, spring of 2017. So I was touring for that. So I wasn't writing it. I was sort of thinking. And then I started writing another book that was like a ghost story, because I always try to write ghost stories, and then I always fail at writing ghost stories. So there was a whole ghost story novel in between this and that one. And then I think in the summer of 2017 is when I started really in earnestness working on this book and seeing where it was coming from. Mm-hmm. And so I'd had like a year, and I toured in that time a bunch for my last book, All Grown Up. And so I'd been having conversations across America, and also I think traveling. I don't know what your experience was like traveling last fall, but it was being on airplanes and seeing people watching a lot of Fox News, and just like that, and just being like, oh, we're in trouble. Like, it's not going anywhere. It's growing. It's only growing, that kind of thing. So I was like sort of using tour. That is the thing I do miss about tour, using it as an opportunity to see what's going on in America, because I do consider myself an American writer. I'm imagining you do too, if you have the word American in the title of one of your books. So, so it's not just writing. I mean, I write about regions and cities, but I also think that it has to feel bigger than just that. So it was about being in America and then going and sitting down and writing and thinking about all those things. So I started it, I think, in summer of 2017 and probably finished it, it's like a year cycle for me or something like that, with all the edits and everything done. So it's pretty, ripped from the headlines, fresh feeling for me. And I don't know if I don't know. It was like the thing I thought I could do, which is probably naive, but I just thought I was hoping that people would pick up the book and think differently about men like this if they hadn't seen them in that way or thought of them in that way. I've had enough people say to me, this is my father, this reminds me of my mother, or something like that, that I know that it is relatable, even though like we always turn up the drama in what we're doing, your books aren't really quiet either. So,
well, I mean, it's relatable, but what I think is so smart about the way you kind of approach like our American life or our American situation is, our politics aren't about politics strictly. I think that they're so deeply psychological, and they're about all of these wounds and problems that we're suffering as a society and as a culture. I mean, so I think by getting at the kind of devastating attraction of the toxic male through these intimate relationships, instead of looking at it in terms of like, a social relationship to a public figure. Instead, you're looking at these intimate relationships of the wife, Barbara, the daughter, Alex, the daughter-in-law, and more, Twyla, and also like the granddaughters who I loved so much, Sadie and Avery. Like getting at the way in which they can't really break out of the orbit of this man, even though none of them like him. Why does he exercise such outsized power? And a lot of it is about, the power that society gives him as a man.
No one stops him.
No one stops him.
No one stops him. I'll have like one little Sopranos reference in there. And when I first moved to New York, so like in the like late 90s, early aughts, I worked for HBO, and I ran the website for The Sopranos. And so I was really intimate with the scripts. And we did some like extended scene extensions and things like that. We did like TV, like just for the web. It was like back when like nobody was paying attention to the internet. And so then we like could go and shoot secret things on the set and stuff like that. And so
that is so cool. I love that.
It was like,
great.
It was very influential on me, but it was also like, as a side note, like David Chase, who's the creator of the show, and in general, like men who create TV shows. I mean, there are some women who create TV shows too, but certainly at that time when I was coming up, I was seeing mostly men who were creating these TV shows. And it was like all about their vision at the top, and then everyone sort of had to scurry around underneath them and like bring, they were the experts, and then we were all just sort of extending the brand or the vision of the show. And so I think that one of the reasons why I left, not that anyone gave a shit if I left, because somebody was certainly waiting to step in and work in The Sopranos after me, but I was like, when is it my turn? Like, when do I get to say what I have to say? So, and The Sopranos was really kind of all about that. Like, nobody was ever really going to stop Tony Soprano, until they stopped him at the very end. So I don't know if you've seen the season finale or not, but spoiler, I spoiled the end of The Sopranos.
Damn it.
So
I was meaning to get to that.
I'm sorry. So I feel like I don't know how you change society. I really don't, but I do know that hopefully these are kind of like little steps that we can take as artists anyway, is to create a scenario where it's not about them, it's about the women, or it's about the conversation about the damage that they cause, but we don't really see them being in control. We take the control away from them. And so in that way, this is it's a very feminist book.
Yeah. Well, and it's also, I want to say, a very subversive and I think radical book in other ways, not just ways that pertain to women and trying to unmarginalize women. But you pay a lot of fascinating, well, Sarah said it really well in the introduction. She said, none of your minor characters are minor. You take the idea of the minor character and you really subvert that. And so that's something I wanted you to talk about too, because one of the things I love in the novel is that you constantly break the rule that I think I was like taught by some, writing teacher long ago, having to do with point of view. Like a novel's point of view is kind of centered on the main character, and you have to be consistent, or maybe you'll alternate between like one or two characters, but you're certainly not going to like pop out to the cable car operator who sees Alex running toward him and has a moment of seeing her from the outside and thinking about her. You pop out to all of these marginal, minor people who become the center in that moment in which you occupy their consciousness. Do you know what I mean? And I wanted you to talk about that because it's something that I think as a fiction writer, I've always thought was against the rules. Like illegal. Like I would be
crime. I know. Well, you can do it. You can do it as long as you like really work hard on it.
Well, because every time you do it, that person, whoever that minor character is, blooms into existence instantly on the page. And it's fantastic because we end up with this city. We have a family, but we also have a city of all these other people that the Tuckmans, the family, they don't even notice these people, but we get to notice them.
There's like a bunch of things going on with that. Like, so first of all, they all just showed up. So I was really uncomfortable with writing about New Orleans because I'm new in town and people are very protective of this city. And I'm aware of that and have been made aware of that again and again. So I was just going to write about these outsiders. That was my entry point, was these outsiders who were, because there's 30% population, there's been a 30% population shift since Katrina here. So it's not invalid to write from a new-ish kind of person, and that's sort of acknowledged in the text. But then as I was writing it, like immediately all these, native New Orleanian kind of characters like kept popping up and saying, you actually have to put us in here. You don't get to write this book without us, which is really important, right?
Yeah.
Like, really important to acknowledge like that somebody like me is coming into the city and the last thing I want to do is sort of like take their culture and make it mine, or make something of it that's not true to it. So it's really an acknowledgement of like of this city that I love and that I live in. And so they were there and I didn't really know what to do with them. I mean, I liked them as a device in terms of like them showing me the Tuckmans. Or other characters. Like I really appreciated that at first. And then as it happens, draft after draft, like they start to take shape and form. And then at some point, like maybe like fifth or sixth draft, it was like, I got some feedback, I think from Laura Vandenberg. And she was like, you need to like lean in. You either need to take it away or lean more into it. And so I did another draft and then I realized that they were all, I was thinking about, there's a line from Sharon's chapter and something that I've heard before in this town is that everyone's kind of everyone's your cousin kind of, not my cousin because I'm new here, but if you're born and raised here, like, people are sort of really, it's all like, there's just such a deep, thick, entrenched history here. So I started to really think of them all as cousins and related to each other. And that they were like their own family. Even if I didn't give them a name, they were as much a family as the Tuckmans were. And there's this, moment where there's a ferry operator and Sharon goes to see, she talks for a second that she goes to see this ferry operator that Twyla has interacted with. And that she's related to him, that he's her cousin. And so in my mind, that was sort of like my little, it's all very subtle, right? Like it's my own Easter egg for me probably, but that to me was like hopefully an indicator to the reader, like they're all related.
Right.
They are.
I love that you said, because I had the same thought that the the people of New Orleans are a family, like the Tuckmans are a family, but they're a different kind of family. Like the Tuckmans are a very dysfunctional family. And how would you describe the difference between that literal, deeply dysfunctional family and this this kind of family of people who are family by virtue of living in New Orleans and having that affinity and that long-term communal bond with each other?
I don't mean to idealize any scenario like this. I love this city. I chose to move here. My heart is here. And these are all, I've met really incredible, wonderful people, but we're all human beings. So it's not like this is these are all perfect people. But my sense is like when I think about them all sitting down to Thanksgiving, the Tuckmans sitting down to Thanksgiving, and then I think about Sharon's meals with her family. I just think that there's just like a difference in that, like the way, and for me, writing about food is like crucial and important, and it says a lot, it's one of my top things to write about. And so it says a lot about how people eat. And so I feel like I would much rather go to dinner with the New Orleanians than the Tuckmans.
Oh, hell yeah. Me too. I mean, you couldn't pay me to have dinner with the Tuckmans. And I loved Sharon. I'm glad because I wanted to ask you about Sharon specifically, and I'm glad you brought her up. She was an amazing character to experience late in the book. Late in the book, she almost, I wonder if it was this way for you as a writer. I felt as a reader, although I was obsessed with the Tuckmans, I also kind of embraced Sharon in part because I needed to get outside of the world of the Tuckmans for a little while. And did you feel that way as a writer? Were you like, I have to get out of these people's faces for a minute?
Well,
they're very difficult.
I knew she sort of has a couple of little appearances at the beginning of the book. But I knew she was, I always knew she was going to be there from the beginning, but I sort of had to earn the right to spend time in her company, I think is part of it. And she's for a lot of people she's their favorite character or she's sort of like the good character or whatever. And I'm like, she's actually just like an average human being. It's just that everyone else sucks so much that in contrast, I love her, but like, she's also like not perfect. So, but in contrast to like them kind of sucking, she's probably like a relief, but she, again, it was like, she represents like that New Orleans family she sort of like lives more in a neighborhood and connects more with the neighborhood. And I didn't feel like I felt like I'd spent a little bit too much time in the French Quarter. And I liked the stuff that I had in the French Quarter that's sort of like more toward, hitting these hot spots or whatever. But I wanted to write about, being in New Orleans and having it be hot and like, I'm obsessed with how like overgrown it gets here. Like right now, I keep posting all these pictures on my Instagram that's like of just like plants, just like everywhere, spilling all over the place in the city because like mid-September, it's still summer, it's still quite hot here. Yeah. But it's, it's a rainy season too, it's hurricane season. So it's just like it's just humid and pregnant and kind of sexy and sweaty and gross too. And I just wanted to like write about that or being in that and like being in a neighborhood and like what the streets are like and how you notice your neighbors and living down here, like having like fences, like after living in New York City for so long where like I lived in like a loft building with concrete floors and it was like you spent all your time trying to like not be too loud or, so your neighbor couldn't, you wouldn't want to bother your neighbor. Everyone kept secrets and was hiding. And here it's like harder, like you just notice more. I don't know. And I'm fascinated with the streets here. So she just was like, she was real and she was an important character. And she did a lot. And I wanted to have one more thing. I feel like I'm keep talking.
No, keep talking about Sharon.
One more thing is that, now I'm giving away the ending, but the book is, the challenge of the book, like there's all these like little structures within it. And the structure that I wanted it to be a day in the death of Victor. And so I needed to have, I always knew that there was going to be the last, like a medical professional. I wanted them, you know, the last person to see him alive on, or dead or whatever on Earth. And so she's a medical examiner, and I met a medical examiner, and I was able to go down to the morgues and explore it, which is always like fun when you can do a little bit of research and talk to her about life and death and her philosophies and things like that. So she's not Sharon, but it was really interesting to learn about those things and to contemplate. I don't know. So I'm like getting older, and I mean, we all are every second, but this book is like the most that I've ever contemplated mortality. This is like my late 40s book.
Yeah.
It's changed. I mean, I really was not writing about this 10 years ago. I was not writing about death. And now I think about it much more. So this was like, it was an interesting way to process it through her. But so she does a lot of work for me. Like as a character, she's, you know, she's the longest chapter out of all of them, and she gets incredible attention because she has such a huge responsibility, many responsibilities.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, do you have characters that have more work to do than other characters? Do you feel that way? Yeah.
But you never know ahead of time, right? Or at least I don't. I don't plan out my books thinking like, okay, this character is going to do a lot of emotional heavy lifting. You don't know. It's like you discover that as you go.
Yeah. So she was great to write. Yeah.
She's a great character. Jami, I want to get to questions which are starting to crop up, and they're great questions. So thank you to those of you who have started to put your questions up, and please keep them coming. I'm going to start at the top. Jami, you've written 7 novels, and that gets 2 exclamation points. And I have to say 7 novels merits 7 exclamation points. Which has been your favorite novel and why? And there's a second part to this question. Also, what's your top writing tip? So 2 questions.
Favorite, I don't know, you know, you love them all for different reasons, right? I really loved Saint Maisie so much, which is my 5th book, because it was based on a real person. It's the only time I've ever done something like that. And she really haunted me in the best way. And I think I learned from her because she was such a good person when I was, even though she was deeply flawed. And so I don't know, I really enjoyed that experience of like spending time with her. And I met people who knew the real Maisie afterwards. So it was kind of like, and who were older, but they knew her when they were children, like in the 1930s in New York City. There was like a whole generation of kids that knew her and remember her, which was just, I just loved it. Like I loved that experience of just bringing her to life and like adding to her legacy, because she was originally written about in the Joseph Mitchell book Up in the Old Hotel too. So she was just somebody who was really special, and I still think about her all the time because I just think, what would she think about what's happening right now, you know? And I don't know, she just was, so I think that, like, I love them all, and I accomplished different things in all of the books, but like that one, I have just a fondness for the subject matter, probably.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I love that. What about your top writing tip? This is important to me.
I don't know. I think the thing that I know is that there's no way over it. There's only a way through or around it. It's just through it. Like you just have to sit down every day and do it. And like, even if it's hard, like then it's hard is like when you're getting somewhere, you know. I just think I don't have like any like there's no sneakiness to it. Do you know what I mean? Like you just have to like, I wish there was a way, but then you just kind of have to, I don't know, you have to kind of earn it. I mean, I would say, this is not really a tip, but it's kind of a piece of advice, is like, that I talk about, like, if I want to do conferences and stuff like that, is like, you have to know why you're writing it. You have to like understand your intention behind it. And if you don't know why you're writing it, if you sit down and spend some time with it, trying to figure it out, I think that that's really helpful. and you'll learn something about yourself and you'll learn something about the material too.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a long haul to write a book. So you have to make sure you're doing it kind of for the right reasons, I think.
Yeah, it is a long haul, although for you, much less so than for me. When you said that it usually took you about a year, a few minutes back there, I almost fell out of my chair, but I managed to like retain my composure. Next question. This is a good one. As I was reading, I found myself wondering, did Jami get drunk at that revolving bar too? I really appreciate your being. The answer is yes. I really appreciate your being in the city you're writing about. It gave the scenes in the book more weight in my mind. Also, your social media presence really enhanced my appreciation of the book.
Oh, well, that's nice to know. I'm about to like leave Twitter again for a while so I can free my soul for a bit because it's a little rough. It's a little rough on social media right now. And I'm launching a newsletter instead that's going to be just about writing. So that people will still be it'll be like a weekly newsletter. So people will still be able to kind of, I'm still going to be reaching out, but I'm going to try to do less Twitter. That's not what she asked. Did I get drunk on that bar? Yes, I have gotten drunk at that bar. I walked almost there isn't anything in the book that I didn't actually go to. I really went and drove to like a pecan farm in Alabama, and I went and rode the streetcar line. I went and rode on my bike and a couple of times and took some notes on it. And it's a lot easier to do that in this city than in other cities because it's such a small city and the streets are pretty walkable. But I think people nowadays tend to rely too much, I think, on Google Earth. And like, I think it's really helpful. I'll just tell like a really quick story. Like when there's a scene in the book where they go to a pecan farm to eat barbecue, Twyla and her daughter. And it's raining, or it's just rain, and they realize there's snakes everywhere. And like because I went to this pecan farm in Alabama, I was talking to the people who like owned the farm and asked them if I could walk around, and they said, well, we would say yes ordinarily, but it just rained and there's snakes everywhere. So I was like, I'm gonna like steal that detail, and that's the kind of thing I could never have ever known.
Yeah, that's not on Google Earth. Google Earth doesn't have that setting that shows if there's snakes all over the ground.
I have even gone and like Googled snakes on pecan farms after rain just to like see, and it's just not a thing that people would notice. So, if I went back to like the writing advice question, I'd be like, get off your butt and go somewhere. I know that we are confined now in new ways, but I still think you can find ways to get out there in the world.
Yeah, well, we're confined in new ways, but we're not like in our home places. We can walk around and see what's on the ground when it rains. And I just like, that's a great detail, like that lived experience of having that. That's just gold, like the kind of thing as a writer I just love finding.
What's your writing tip?
My writing tip?
Yeah.
Oh, come on. I'm not the person who can finish a book in a year like you.
My gosh.
I mean, I guess I would say, apart from like what you've already said, which is just, you just have to do it and do it every day and just do it as much as possible. I guess my new tip would be like, be much more forgiving of yourself and be much more willing to make a big mess. I've actually found much more of my work recently in stuff that I actually thought was garbage, like stuff that I wrote just thinking like, I'm just filling the page. It's just garbage. And later I was able to see it differently. I don't know. Be more forgiving of yourself is my new writing tip. That sounds it's like very much the writing tip of a middle-aged person, I think.
Wow. But it's true. I feel like with that Sharon chapter, I think I rewrote it like 10 times. Like it was such I just hacked my way through it because I was like, I gotta like earn it really, like, and I just kept going and going and going. And I had like so many readers on that chapter, and it was just a lot, but it started out messy, but I was like, I'm not gonna not do this.
Right.
Like,
right.
So just
no, I don't mean leave it messy. I mean like be unafraid to make a big mess on your way to hopefully figuring it out. Yeah. I like the way, you've used that phrase earning it, like earning a character or earning sort of an aspect of the story several times. And I really like it. It's interesting because I don't know. It suggests to me almost that you feel like as the author, you have to sort of prove yourself to your story or your characters. And I like that viewpoint, actually.
For sure. I don't think we should presume that that we're allowed to do anything.
Yeah.
So,
but wait, there's more questions.
Oh, all right.
Sarah asks, what was a surprising difficulty with writing a memoir instead of writing a novel?
Oh, wow. I mean, yeah, I'm writing a memoir right now. I just finished the first draft. I don't know. I think it's been I was just kind of tweeting about this yesterday, I think. Like, I'm surprised by how much I learned. I don't know why I'm surprised how much I learned about myself, but I feel like it's like been really helpful for me as a person. Like, I've kind of grown from it. And I don't know. It just feels strange that it is weird. Like, I wrote a lot of it during during lockdown. So I had no choice but to like really face myself. Like, there's no like, and then I wrote about a really tragic moment in my life, but then I went out on tour for a week and I didn't have to think about it. It was like every day you got to keep facing it, which is, I think, has been a little different from my writing process in the past. So I don't know. I will see if it's any good. That's the other thing. Like, I have less confidence in it. Like, my sentences are good, right? My sentences are always like going to be at a certain level. I know how to write a good sentence, but I don't know if it's good. I don't know if it's like what I think is interesting about me is maybe not the most interesting thing. And I also feel a difference in like when you write a novel, you can make it as you can make it like anything happen. You can make make choices to make it more bigger, dramatic. Like with your life, like, I mean, I didn't like walk the Pacific Coast Highway, in a broken or whatever. Like, I didn't do anything. Like, I was just kind of neurotic for a really long time.
Not that we're referring to anyone in particular.
Yeah, no, but she did something. Like, what am I done? Like, nothing. And so, like, I
published 7 books for one thing.
Yeah, but that's like such a writing is just you sitting at home. So that's not like an action that you're taking. And so. Yeah. I'm hoping that there's like enough action and movement in the story that it justifies its existence. I worry that it's, I just want to make sure it's supposed to be there. It's supposed to exist, and that it'll be, that it will offer something to the world.
So, I mean, just to go back to the phrasing of the question, would you, no, I'm not like, it's not like your answer wasn't adequate.
Okay.
It's more that what you said actually led me back to the question from a different direction, because this idea of the surprising difficulty, it's making me think about this novel. And one of the things that I loved so much about it was, one of the other questioners mentioned this, the way you depicted the city. And it's a city that, as you've mentioned a couple times tonight, you're a newcomer to, you're an outsider to, and we're never newcomers to ourselves or outsiders to ourselves. So like, do you feel like one of the difficulties of the memoir is you're stuck in yourself? It's like hard to get that outsider's sense of wonder or discovery about your own self.
I mean, so what a thing that I'm doing, which I'm finding really helpful, is one, I'm giving myself permission to imagine things about other people. Right. So I'm saying, I'm taking not characters, people, but like that I might have had a very brief interaction with in my life. And then like an example would be like being in Big Sur and traveling by myself and sort of having this like solo traveler experience where like it's like I was staying at this inn and they put me in the solo traveler room, and then like all the guest books from like decades were like people traveling by themselves talking about heartbreak. So like for whatever reason it was just like heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak, and I was like, this is a lot, and leave me alone. And and so then I like the next day I went down to the beach and there was like this couple there, and like he was like taking her picture or like not paying attention to her the way she wanted, or like, how you like see a couple and you just like make up an entire story about them. Like, yes. Right? Okay. Yeah. I do that, but in my memoir. Like I was like, and so this is what I was thinking about when I was like looking at them. And I keep giving myself permission to like make up stories about random people. And so that has been really helpful for me. It's like they, in a way, have like offered perspective on my life. Like it's very strange, but they've become like a tool. Like I'm letting my imagination be like I'm not willing to give it up for this book, right? Like,
right, but that's so brilliant because it's actually you're populating your memoir in a way with the sorts of characters that you used in All This Could Be Yours, right? To like get outside of the Tuckmans, but look back at them.
Yeah, and I'm also like,
if that's fair to say.
Yeah, and I'm also like looking at. I've just been writing about a lot of other writers and stuff, like just their work that I like. Like I don't know if it's going to stay in. But I'm just like, and here's a poem I liked. Let's talk about that poem for a while in the middle of a chapter about whatever, so I'm just like letting myself like use what the strategies I would use for writing a novel and putting it into a memoir. And then we'll see what sticks and what doesn't. But I think it is helpful. I think in that way, it's helping me to have fresh eyes for myself. I'm leaning into it. Yeah. I don't know if I'm breaking the rules again. Maybe.
You should. I hope you are.
Yeah.
I want to grab a quick final question related to the memoir. Jennifer asks, was the memoir your choice or was it requested by someone, your publisher, etc.?
Please, nobody needs a memoir from me. I made them do it. No, I didn't make them do it. I thought I was going to do a really simple essay collection, actually, because I have written many, many essays over the last 15 years of my life. And I thought it would be like half collected and half new. And that it would be kind of quick and dirty. And I just I was actually looking for a little bit of a pause because I have been writing these novels at such a rapid pace for so long that it's not that I can write any novel in the world that I want. It's not that, but I felt like I jumped through enough hoops for a while, if that makes sense. And so I was like, let me just do a little essay collection. But then the minute I looked at those essays, I thought, I can do better. Like the old essays, I was like, I can do better than this. And so then now it's become like I've written an entirely new book. So I did this to myself and I have no one to blame but me.
Well, I'm sure no one's going to blame you for writing it once it's done. There's a lot of excitement in the chat about it, which I share, both about like the fact that it's going to be a memoir and about the fact that it sounds so novelistic as a memoir, which I love also, like the idea that generically or genre-ically, it will be, a melding and a redefining of boundaries. I think we're out of both time and questions, but there is one. We're out of time, but there's one more question. Can I ask the last question?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, I'll go.
Because I think it's a quick one.
Okay.
What are you ladies listening to music-wise and podcast-wise? I'm not going to answer because my mind goes blank when I'm asked questions like this, but Jami, you are going to answer if you can.
I have been listening to a lot of Kanye. I don't know why. I've just been listening to a lot of Kanye lately. Morgan Parker was talking about listening to the Pointer Sisters. So all afternoon I listened to the Pointer Sisters and it was pretty good. Perks your spirits up. And I can't remember the name of it now, but my friend Josh Gondelman has a really great game show podcast that maybe someone will type in there that I can't remember what it's called, but it's really quite charming and it really like lifts me up.
I need to hear that.
It's so good. It's like he just basically asks like really nice questions from really funny people. I'll send you it. And it's just, he's got a really soothing voice and it's just kind of fun to listen to. So I'm not listening to like any news. I don't want any more news.
It's hard to listen to it or read it. I do one or the other. I read the news or I listen to the news. It's hard to do both in the same day.
Oh, make my day. My mom apparently listens to this podcast. Joan and Steve just provided it. Josh's. Thanks, Mom.
Oh, that's the Josh Gondelman podcast?
Yes. Google.
Thank you. Make my day.
I feel like
it's soothing and it seems like it'll make you feel better.
It's smart and funny, but also it's just really funny. I always have to say this, that my parents are nothing like any of the people in any of my books. Just need to.
I have no difficulty believing that, because you are a wonderful and nice person. And they must also be wonderful and nice.
There we go.
Jami, this was so fun. This was great. I'm really, it remains confusing to me that after doing events like this, there's no going to the bar and getting a drink afterwards and talking about it. It's so strange, isn't it? We just go poof. But I hope you'll have a lovely wine or something.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Good.
It was really nice to see your face.
It was nice to see yours, and it was nice to see you, Sarah. And
nice to meet you, and nice to see you, Jami. That was such a wonderful conversation. It was so fun to eavesdrop on the two of you. I just got lost in it. I didn't even type in the chat bar. I just wanted to listen. So, just a reminder, books are available from Women and Children First. We so appreciate you being here tonight, and so loved your audience questions were excellent. So thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, chat. Love you, chat.
And I wish we could have
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. We wish you were here in the neighborhood, but it was wonderful to join you virtually. Thanks so much, and have a wonderful.
Thank you so much. It was great. Great doing it. Next time in person, hopefully soon.
Absolutely. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.